The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Okay, so we're in the home stretch now. So what we're going to do for our final activity before we do kind of a short discussion on some resources that are out there is we're going to come back to our economic, social, and political that we've been looking at all day long. And what we're going to start with is we're going to put you guys into 3 groups. Each group is going to get one of the 3 sheets. And your group needs to summarize and kind of pick out some of the key points that you see for your category and thinking about, again, what are the causes of the Great Depression through each of these individual lenses. So we're going to count off 1, 2, 3. So
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
1,
2,
3.
1, 2.
All right, and she'll be 3 when she comes back. All right, so if my 1s will come, you'll get the economic, 2s will get social, 3 will get political. And again, in the group, I want you guys to look through the comments that have been made throughout the day, and you are going to summarize what's there. Again, picking out kind of the key points and thinking about, again, our question of what are the causes of the Great Depression from each of these lenses. Yeah, if you want to stand up here, if that's easier. Yeah, it's however if you guys want to pull the sheets off and move around, or if you want to come up here and stand. Or yeah, go to the tables, whatever you think works best.
A lot of the government wasn't preventing or wasn't actively looking forward to prevent something like that from happening.
You know, like my grandmother, she emailed her generation. She wasn't born then, but she was born in the 40s. But you know that you can even.
That's just Would it be fair to say distrust in the media too?
All right, so if you guys can kind of be wrapping up your conversation about summary. And as you come and sit back down, I want you guys to find one of the other people from the other groups and sit with them. So you're going to have groups of 3. You should have 4 groups of 3, and you'll have a person from each that talks about each of the categories.
Right, we're jigsawing.
Okay. So now we should have someone who was in the group that talked about summarizing economic, political, and social. So you have all 3 represented in your small groups now. So thinking about what your other groups, the points that you just talked about, we want you guys to collectively, thinking about each of these 3 lenses now, we're going to answer our question, what were the major causes of the Great Depression? Again, pulling in pieces from each of these 3 categories, thinking about how they relate. And your answer must be succinct enough to fit on this size Post-it note. So, to kind of help, again, limit it. Not tweet size, but again, we're not writing up a paper, we're writing a short statement, causes of the Great Depression, looking at it through, again, those 3 lenses.
And you don't have to give 3 reasons, 1 from each category. I mean, you already noticed that some of the reasons, like, for instance, distrust in government, banks, and businesses can fit in all 3 categories. So this is where your answers, you can see where the overlaps are. And so no need to have like 3 distinct reasons.
Most people agreed that it had to do with bank failures.
Okay.
And that was listed up there the most.
So we could say the causes, basically causes of the Great Depression were
Banks, government.
Are those the pins that were oops?
Okay, this is a big, interest there.
Wait a minute. Laissez-faire policies.
I can't spell that. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say.
L-double-E.
How do you spell that? What's another word?
Exacerbated by a conflicting policy of laissez-faire versus tariff.
Right. And then the Hoover asked people not to lower wages but lay off.
Add distrust in banks and government. Like put banks in front of that.
All right, are we ready to share our answers? All right, so let me get a volunteer group. What did your group come up with as far as the answer to our question, what were the causes of the Great Depression?
I'll start. Okay, bank failures, which led to distrust in banks and government, exacerbated by the government policy of tariffs, pushed by big businesses in a laissez-faire economy.
Ooh, that's good. That summarizes the whole thing.
All right, would another group like to share? Everybody's like what she said, right? Okay, so hopefully you can see through this exercise and kind of how we had to structure this today that this type of activity can challenge your students to think about the topic that you're studying, the sources that you're looking through a variety of lenses. And again, think about how these things, these different categories interact with each other. So that we saw throughout the day that some things that were economic also had social and political implications as well. And so again, they can be all three, and one can then have impacts in either of the other categories. So thoughts or questions about the economic, social, political that we've been looking at throughout the day? You guys think that's something that your students could kind of get into?
I think it's more engaging than your stereotypical lecture about the Great Depression. I mean, that it gives them ownership in how to learn the material and how it can be related to what they're experiencing now and how we can avoid stuff in the future. So
yeah, and I think the other thing is thinking about cause and effect, consequences. I think all of those are also good ways to challenge students to think about both the things you teach in history, but then also again real world contemporary issues and their implications. Anybody else?
And it's really good too to connect like big units together too, because like right now, like with my 8th graders, because they're considered high school at my school, we're fixing to start the American Revolution. There's so many parts that by the time you get to the end of the unit, the kids kind of lose that. Like at the beginning, it's really a movement, not just like that different things. So by doing this, like you could put this on the wall, do it, and then at the end you do an exercise like this and make them realize it all came together, and it was all of it went together that led to our government today.
Yeah, and I think you can do that both, looking at kind of smaller chunks of time, and then also then thinking about it more largely. Because really, when we get into this, and when we were looking at sources, we were thinking about again end of World War I. We're thinking about the 20s. We're thinking about into the 30s, and then even thinking about when we get to the New Deal policies, even pulling that in. And so again, thinking about all those things together. Instead of just how we like to silo different points in history sometimes and not think about how the implications of things that happened before need to be brought in and connect to things that we're studying in the new unit that you happen to be in. Okay, so lastly, we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about some of the resources that are available. So Stacy showed us, where is the... So again, Stacey had showed you our website earlier this morning. So for those of you who maybe are not familiar with our site, or for those of you who are not familiar with our new site, the way we have this designed now is really set up for easy browsing. So that you'll see over here on the left-hand side kind of the toolbar with all of the different types of materials that we have. We do continue to have our kind of what's new section here in the center, which will have the newest items have been added to the website. But to get to the bulk of our materials, you'll use this toolbar here on the left. So when we think about our lesson plans, we have those designed now broken down by subject area. And then for the or for any of our history topics, they're also then organized in chronological format. And so you'll see that we have them broken down and kind of put into eras. So for Great Depression and New Deal, most of the lesson plans that we have focus more on New Deal than kind of the causes. So you'll see what we have there, and again, they are listed in chronological order. And each one of these is a PDF file, and you'll see that some of them have some additional materials listed below them, some PowerPoints. Occasionally you might see some worksheets and those kind of things. For causes of the Great Depression, we have two specific items that I want to draw your attention to. One is a primary source set. And with those, again, you'll see that we have them organized different tabs. So there are grade level resource guides. So we have a resource guide for each grade level for social studies. For the U.S. history, so for like 4th and 8th, there is the pre-colonial to 1850, and then 1850 to modern America. There's world history ones there as well. And then for U.S. history related primary source sets, they are listed in chronological order. So we have one for the 1920s, and then we have one more specifically for causes of the Great Depression. And we used this to pull out some of our sources, but then we found some additional ones as well. So within the primary source set, you'll see there's a historical background section, some additional links, and then here is some different sources that you could use, again, thinking about some of those key terms that are in the curriculum standards, sources that relate to those. The other resource that we have is a newsletter. And our newsletters are listed in chronological order. We do one each month. And within that, there are lesson ideas, links to primary sources, that kind of stuff. So you'll see here we have, of course, an awesome source of the month, a description about our theme, a couple different lesson ideas. So we did one on farming, tracing the roots of the Great Depression. And so this looks at the three presidencies in the 20s, so Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover, and kind of looks at some of the policies during each of their administrations and how that kind of contributed to the lead up to the Great Depression. There will be some important links to other resources that we have out there. There's a lesson idea on bank runs, and then we have a feature here with some of the resources from the Center for Economic Education and the Federal Reserve that are listed here and linked in. And then on the last page, we will have 4 additional primary sources that you can use to pull in against some of those aspects that causes the Great Depression. So our site, again, is new. We are working on updating old materials. So if you find links within materials that are broken, we are in the midst of updating those. And you can just contact either Stacy or I. We can help you track down things that might be broken at the moment. It's a slow process. We're hoping to have this done, in the next couple months. But we're making our way through lesson plans right now. And we are also, as we do that, updating our lesson plans to reflect the new curriculum standards for the next round. So for those standards are going to affect next year. So once we get that all updated, those will reflect those standards. Questions about our site? So we showed you a few things, Stacey showed you earlier, Chronicling America, which is where we found several of the sources that we used, both in the newsletter and then, of course, that you looked at earlier this morning. So if you want to kind of dig in and look for more of those historic newspaper articles related either to the new causes of the Great Depression, lead up to that, or really any topic that you might be looking at in your classrooms, you can find that under digital collections. And then it is one of the featured ones here. So that is Chronicling America, Historic American Newspapers. Currently, it runs from 1709 to 1963, so they are continuing to add to the papers they have listed. So you can do the basic search here. I almost always use the advanced search function. I find that it works better. And so that lets you narrow down by state, by individual paper, year, date, and then you can do, you can select what page of the paper you want to look at, and then gives you different choices as far as how you're going to do your search terms. And then anytime that your search term appears on the newspaper page, it will actually highlight in red where that term is at, and so you can quickly scroll into the article and figure out if that's something that's going to be useful for you or not. It is a great collection, and so we found a lot of good articles for the topics that we were looking at related to the Great Depression, and this was really the treasure trove of what we found. Do you want to talk a little bit about that Coolidge?
Yeah. Another place to find good resources for causes of the Great Depression is a particular collection that the library has called Prosperity and Thrift. And it is specifically looking at consumerism in the Calvin Coolidge presidential era. And it's one of the older collections, so the format you can see looks kind of old already and a little out of date. See, this is what collection homepages used to look like back in the era of American Memory, which is now no longer a thing. Yeah. But all this stuff in here is still searchable and it's still usable, so don't let the formatting throw you off. And most of the sources in here are going to be text sources, like you saw that 299-page document with a lot of different things in it from Coolidge's own papers. But there's also like graphs and charts. Like there's a really neat graph of the growth of the automobile industry. Sometimes there are some images like photographs, but mostly not. There are some other photograph collections on the Library of Congress that are from that era, but not, of course, the famous FSA OWI collection. That's from later, after it hits. Now, you can also browse by subject titles. Now, this is what I did when I was looking to see if they had anything on, for instance, agriculture. So agriculture fits between these two things. So I'm just going to click here, and it's going to give me every single subject in that portion of the alphabet. So I like doing that better than searching, because then you can see, okay, they have agriculture, law and legislation. They have agricultural price supports law and legislation. And that way you can kind of narrow down a bit better and see, okay, well, this is the source that they have on this topic. Now, you may not see a source yet on this bibliographic page, but go to view the item. And sometimes you can view it in HTML. And sometimes they aren't actually showing the HTML text right now. You can see the page images. So that's how you get to it. It's a little bit requiring you to do some steps, but when you get to it, look, this is 24 pages of some, good materials. Now, I don't know how excited high school and middle school kids would be to read this type of source, but, if you spend a little bit of time, you could excerpt it, or, maybe you can find a really good photograph that way. So, yeah, and then to get, you can get a higher quality and that kind of thing. And so back to the homepage, there's also a guide to people, organizations, and topics. So that's another way to kind of get to that. So like department stores, a friendly guidebook to Philadelphia, and this kind of store. So that's kind of fun too, because you get to see consumer habits of Americans, and that's, that ties into all the conspicuous consumption and extension of credit and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, you just kind of go through and you can find a lot of good stuff. It takes a little bit of work, but it's one of the best sources for this particular topic.
Yeah, and I will say, as we were searching and trying to find some good sources for this topic, political cartoons. So there are lots of great political cartoons for the Great Depression. Unfortunately, most of the ones that the Library of Congress has are things that are in collections that are copyright protected, and so they will come up in searches, but you can't expand them. So what you can do, and you can't expand them like that, is oftentimes you can find them somewhere else on the web. So you can always take the title from the Library of Congress and then do a larger Google search to find that somewhere else. But the ones in the Library of Congress collection, you're not going to be able to get that larger image to print them or really be able to do anything with them. So I will caution you on that as you look through, if you are doing some searching in the Library of Congress. Those political cartoons are almost all copyright protected.
And I'll show you how you can filter those out when you're doing a search. I can't remember what any of those titles are, so I'm just going to do John Lewis. I know he's not like a cause of the Great Depression, of course, he's a congressman. But I know that there are some photographs of him that are copyright protected in the Library of Congress. That's why I'm using this as an example. If you scroll all the way to the bottom on the left-hand side, they have these two choices: things that are available online and things that are available only at the Library of Congress, where you have to go and call it up and that kind of thing. So you just want to filter that out by just looking at the stuff online, and that will take out all those little thumbnails. Unfortunately, some of that stuff is great. So what we tried to do was try to find it through just a regular old Google image search, which I know some of you do, to find your sources. But it didn't work out so well for us. Oh, look, the library has a new logo.
You know how our library will, like when we're doing research, they'll get articles for us or books for us or journals for us. will they pull that sort of thing for us at MTSU?
At MTSU? I don't know.
Image search is probably not so much, but if you know where something exists,
Right.
contact that special collection and they may already have it done for you. It can just zip it to you in an email.
Now, another thing that we've done before in the past, again, if there's a source that you really want to use, you plan to, build something really special around it, and you want to go through all these extra hoops, you can contact the Library of Congress about purchasing the digital file for some of these, and so then that way that you could have that you could, use it, and you could create, if you wanted to create a large poster-sized image of it that you could put up and use in your classroom. You have a file size that would support that.
That wasn't painful when we did that for a particular
and
photograph.
it wasn't that expensive either.
No,
it's just
they gave us
a few
a
extra
high
hoops to
quality
jump
JPEG.
through. So.
And they'll give you like information on where to go for copyright, and sometimes you have to contact a different organization outside the Library of Congress for that.
Yeah.
But just the Library of Congress does not hold copyright to any of this.
But not to end on a negative note. So the Chronicling America newspaper collection, as they first started that, the images and political cartoons in it were not keyword searchable. But that is actually something that they are working on making keyword searchable now, so that as they continue to add that in to the searching database there, those images will start to pop up when you do searches in the newspaper collection. Just so if you're searching and you're using that collection, you do have to go to the collection homepage that I showed you a minute ago. It will not search from the homepage of the Library of Congress. It is the only collection like that that the library has, but you have to specifically go to Chronicling America to search for the newspapers. So questions about Library of Congress or any of our teaching with primary sources materials? Yeah.
On the TPS website, is all of that free?
Public domain.
Public domain stuff?
Yes. We sort through that stuff for you so that you don't have to. And we can't display it on our website anyway if it's copyright protected. We don't have permission.
Any other questions? Right. Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to share for resources?
Just real quickly, let me show you Econ Epley, because they have some Great Depression lessons. Lots of you have been in programming with us. Oh, thank you. Okay.
So if you put Great Depression in it, there's a Who Done It, the Great Depression mystery, and it's a video, and the students work through some of the different passages in it and talk about the impact. So basically what we've done here on a more 9-12 level, where did all the money go as part of that, the economics of the New Deal. So lots of great lessons that when you open up, they're free for you. I don't know why, just recently their graphics have gotten weird. But again, that whole every time you change web page formats, the greatest plans go awry. Jackie can tell you about that. They have lots of links to pages, and all of their lessons have, if there's questions they ask, they give you the teacher answer sheet too for that. And then the other thing to show you, Jackie, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it? FederalReserveEducation.org. And the lessons that are associated with the Great Depression, the Great Recession, they pull all those sources together for you. And then, of course, on your agenda, you have lots of links to St. Louis Fed's website specifically. That is one of their areas of interest in terms of economic education. So Dr. Wheelock works with them. He was the one that spoke. And he's my next fantasy economist date, since Jackie didn't hook me up with Alan Greenspan. Dave Wheelock's my next alternative. So I've waited for years to go to dinner with Alan Greenspan. You would think with the connections I have that would happen, but it's not happened yet. So that's the two primary sources that come out of the Center for Economic Education and the Federal Reserve. And again, we gave you some more under additional resources on the back of your agenda that we gave you.